Hello and welcome to Wine Blast. And I'd like to start this one by offering a very warm, wine-fueled welcome, particularly to our new listeners. A lot of you have got in touch recently, so thank you for joining us. It is great to have you.
Great to have you, and great to hear from you too. So thank you for joining the conversation, the chat. Can I also add a welcome back to our existing listeners? We love you all. You know, you stick with us. Even though, you know us and you see us for who we really are. I know, wine-addled, sort of all-round bad influences with, very suspect tasting Christmas jumpers and the like.
Oh, speak for yourself. Anyway, listen, welcome everyone. I like to think we have good taste in wine, even if your taste in jumpers could do with some work.
See, I'm being hung out to
Anyway,
dry
what is this episode about? Well, it does actually follow quite neatly on, because this episode is all about the wine lovers' wish list for the year ahead. So what we wine lovers want to see happen in 2023.
And my wish list includes sporting better jumpers. Yeah,
I really like to think it does. But this particular wish list has to be wine related, I'm afraid. So no, unless they're jumpers with wine on them, which would kind of be bad taste anyway. So no, just no.
I don't know. Actually, I reckon there's some pretty cool wine jumpers out there.
No, there aren't.
Send us in some pics, people. Help me fight this fight, and I will gladly sport them.
Do not send in jumpers, whatever you do.
Send jumpers or pics, whatever. But I'll then send you a photo of Susie's face as we're recording.
I thought you were going to see me wearing it then.
Maybe it's time we moved on from jumpers.
I think it might be,
because this isn't Jumper Blast.
It's not Jumper Blast
after all.
No.
Although that is an idea.
No, it's not.
No, okay, fine. So we were thinking for this show about doing some sort of resolutions or predictions, weren't we, for the year ahead? But then we realised that none of those things ever actually happen, do they?
Not usually, no. Certainly not in this household.
So better to focus on what we want to happen, because that's more realistic. And also, I don't know, we're just a bit more invested in that kind of thing, isn't it? Plus, it's more fun.
Yeah.
And more interesting to listen to, ultimately,
well,
I hope.
I guess we'll find out, won't we?
Yep.
But here is a clip to at least whet your appetite.
So for 2023, I would like to discover some new grape varieties or some English wines. I have already tried a sparkling. First time when I saw this wine, it was like, okay, sparkling wine from England. Must be horrible. I was saying to myself, So I tried it, and the wine was amazing.
So that's Ioannis from Wine Bar Claret, and we have a host of views on this, don't we?
We do.
Across a whole range of topics as to what we wine lovers want to see happen with wine in the year ahead. We're also going to hear from Master of Wine Peter McCombie, wine writer Libby Brodie, and Master Sommelier Gearoid Devaney. And of course, we'll be throwing our tuppence into the pot too.
Oh, you'd be disappointed if we didn't, wouldn't you? Can I also just add, we're featuring lots of views from different people in this episode, but we'd actually love to hear from you on this subject, if you haven't already got in touch. We'll put the links in the show notes, so please do let us know.
Yeah, we should add that this is also kind of a two-parter, isn't it? Because we're going to follow this up with an episode on how to be a better wine lover, which sort of naturally follows on from this topic. And for which we've got some brilliant material, a lot of which picks up threads we touch on here. But we want to start with this one, don't we? And indeed start at the beginning. We want to explore what wine lovers are hoping for in the year ahead, what to see more of, what to see less of, hopes and fears, the wish list, that kind of thing. And the short answer is lots of things.
Yeah. I mean, we put this question out on social media.
Yeah,
where else, of course. And we got a big response. In fact, I think it's still going on, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
So the question we put out was, Wine Peeps, what's your greatest hope for 2023? And I would say the answers fell into a number of kind of broad categories, which we're going to touch on in turn. And then we're going to also add our own thoughts into the mix as we go along, aren't we?
So perhaps the most predictable response was along the lines of drink better wine.
Loving it.
So it's simple.
That'd be top of my list too.
Zoltan said drink better. Jens said only drink good wine. And Louis wants to drink several vintages of Ponte Cane. I've never had it before. And I personally loved this wish from Alessandro, which verges on the poetic. He wrote, to have a normal year of hard work, some successes, a lot of fun, some moments of serendipity, and of course, drinking some amazing wines.
Oh, I love the idea of serendipity. We all need a bit of that in our lives, don't we?
And we missed that in lockdown.
We did, yeah. Anyway, so parallel to the idea of drinking better, some people wanted to do so without a hefty price tag, without the expense. So Damiano was in search of a sound price drop. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but wishful thinking. And Roscoe's wish was that the price of Penfolds Grange halves.
That's quite specific, isn't it?
Now, what I'd like to say is, I think if you can afford even half the price of Grange, you're not doing badly, Roscoe.
That's very true.
And then there were some that just focused more on quantity than quality, which, can happen. Andy Davies' wish was that the wine fountain of Irache is somehow relocated to the end of my road. I have to confess, we had to look that one up, didn't we?
We did have to look that one up, embarrassingly. Especially given we probably visited when you wrote your wine travel book on Northern Spain, didn't we?
And no doubt.
So it is. So it's on the Camino de Santiago, and it's a monastery in Navarra surrounded by vineyards where there's a fountain. And if you're a pilgrim on the Camino, you can choose to refresh yourself with water or with wine.
I love it.
It's an impossible choice, isn't it, for a wine lover?
I wouldn't think it's impossible. I know what I'd go for. Anyway.
You might not be very hydrated, but anyway, it's quite a thought, isn't it?
But on which note, where do we stand on drinking better?
On this issue, yeah. I think this is a good one. I think every wine lover should aim to drink better almost every year. Certainly this year, what
does it mean,
Well, just drink better quality wine. Let's drink these bottles. We've got nice bottles. There are nice bottles out there we can buy. Let's get them. Yeah. Let's drink them. Yeah. We mentioned this in our Wine of the Year show. Stop hoarding special bottles and start to drink and enjoy them. None of us wine lovers do that enough. Live life. Wear your best clothes, drink your best bottles, share, be merry. We've already started doing this, haven't we? With some Burgundy this January, pulled out some really nice bottles, probably better than we probably thought
should have done, or
should have earned. But actually,
for a Tuesday night,
carpe diem, seize the day. Am I persuading you?
Well, I'm just thinking about you wearing your best clothes. I'm hoping there are no Santa jumpers involved.
You did have a strange expression on your face. I just wondered what it was about.
Your best clothes. But no, I agree. I mean, we should stop putting off drinking those sort of squirreled away bottles, and they may not be hugely expensive. They're just those special ones that you want to drink, and so drink them, go for it, enjoy them, buy more, end of. And if you can get hold of a wine fountain, so much the better.
The wine fountain's got to be in the mix, isn't it? Anyway, then
but it's got to have good wine in it.
Well, that's very true. Now you're getting quality into quantity. So then we did have a couple of wishes that touched on what might, loosely be termed health or drinking versus not drinking. One wish was for the disappearance of dry January.
Was that your wish?
No. It was anonymous. Just going to leave that one hanging. And Nick Haynes was wishing that some eminent scientist produces incontrovertible evidence that drinking fine Pinot every day is the single best thing you can do for your health. And GPs can prescribe it. Burgundy might need to extend its boundaries a little.
I think that's every wine lover's dream, isn't it? But the importance of fermented food and drink for the gut microbiome. This is the new thing, isn't it?
Isn't it?
And maybe wine does help with that. Who knows? Yeah. We wait with bated breath to find out, don't we? Yeah, and as for Pinot being the silver bullet, not so sure, as delicious as it can be. And of course, don't forget, good Pinot doesn't just come from Burgundy, Mark. It's very expensive there. So, the doctors may need to prescribe Pinot from somewhere else. We've got German, Californian, Kiwi, Australian, English. Life-enhancing Pinot.
Stuff from all
That's
over.
What we need.
From what I'm seeing as well, to pick up on the dry January thing, damp January is on the way up, isn't it? Rather than dry. It does sound a bit weird, doesn't it? It sounds like you've had an accident.
It sounds a bit soggy.
But I think the idea is for moderation rather than total abstention, which I have much more sympathy with. And I think it's better all around. I was actually reading some figures saying that alcohol sales totally rebound after dry January every year, which more than makes up for the dip in consumption in January. Apparently, there's something like a 49% uptick in booze and alcohol and tobacco sales, after January ends. And that's actually risen since Dry January started about 10 years ago. So that's not great, is it?
No,
Kind of renders the whole thing questionable at best. But anyway, just to clarify, we don't do Dry January.
I think people might have guessed that already.
Well, I'm just clarifying.
Our lovely listeners.
Just to clarify, maybe I'm just saying it for myself. We do have a bit of dry sherry, but that's about it.
Or dry white wine. But on this theme, and being totally honest, one of our dearest wishes would be for world-class, truly delicious, non-alcoholic wine to finally start to appear this year, wouldn't it?
Really
forget Dry January, we don't do that, but it would just be something to savour on our nights off or when we're designated driver, but which actually tastes like decent wine, bit of concentration and beginning to end, not just smells nice, which is not really the case yet.
No, totally. I mean, beer's done it. Spirits have innovated to superb effect. Bravo to them. But wine really is behind the curve on this still, isn't it? There are some signs of progress. I think we both agree.
Oh, definitely.
But really, producers need to have a rocket lit up their proverbials on this front. Invest in some serious R&D. Get some world-class wines, base wines, into the mix to start with. We want to see Cristal grade, Lafitte grade, Whispering Angel grade base wines going into the no-low mix, and make something truly delicious.
Of course we do. I'm not sure that's going to happen. But equally, I have to say, hats off to the few people who are really giving it already a serious go. It obviously isn't easy. We know that. But it is worth it. I think it's harder with wine than anything. Keep going. Please keep going. Anyway, so moving on. Here's a good wish from Salford Roasters. They would like awesome canned wine for the occasional drinker.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this is definitely starting to happen. Canned wine is going from strength to strength, and we'd have it as one big tip for the year ahead. We'll be seeing more and more wine in cans. For example, Waitrose have just announced they're changing not all, but almost all their smaller format wine bottles into cans, which will apparently save 320 tonnes of packaging in a year. And I think more retailers are on this kind of track too, aren't they?
Yeah, there are some who, I think it's things like Fizz, isn't it? Champagne, Prosecco, Cava don't. And Rioja, there's a law against, you have to bottle it in orange. Anyway, something sort of fun stuff like that. But definitely, sustainability is part of the rationale here. It's part of the story, isn't it? Cans are lighter, easier to recycle. But another part of this story is quality, isn't it? And we genuinely are starting to see some really good quality wine in cans, aren't we? Which is really exciting. So we've mentioned the Banks Brothers ones, which we featured in our Wine of the Year before. Had some beautiful wines from South Africa. Then we got Canned Wine Company, Copper Crew. We featured Lubanzi can from our last episode from the Wine Society. Doesn't seem like South Africa is really strong here. We've mentioned that before, haven't we?
I think they are.
But others will follow suit. So, definitely wine in cans, well worth checking out. And it's a big tip for this year. Yeah. Something we'd like to see more of too.
Yeah. And actually tying into the sustainability theme, Paul Tudor hopes that our industry finally wakes up to the existential threat of global warming. Jonathan Gibbs is hoping for a less frightening year climate-wise. And this is a big one for this year, isn't it? Wine responding to the climate crisis. Everyone, from producers to retailers to wine drinkers, everyone taking on some responsibility for their actions and just doing their bit to engage with sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, we covered this quite a bit in our last episode, didn't we? Selling net zero wine. So perhaps we don't need to spend too long on it here, but it is top of the agenda, isn't it?
It really is if you listen to anybody in the trade,
And, actually it offers some quite exciting opportunities as well as challenges. We're also going to come on to it. We talk about how to be better wine lovers too.
Okay, to move on, but with a connecting thread, lots of people's wishes tied in with climate or certainly weather. So Sarah May Grunwald wants rain in Italy, an end to the drought. Scott Hannon from Marlborough in New Zealand wants an easy vintage. What winemaker wouldn't? Douglas Blyde is after a good year for Coteau Champenois. Niche. But this one's a bit controversial. Ingrid from Dunleavy Vineyards in the southwest of England wants Some summer rain for my baby vines. Sorry, everyone. Now, Ingrid, I'm really sorry. Love you, but we can't endorse rain in the summer in England. It's bad enough for the rest of the year. We get plenty. I really don't want any more.
I knew that one would pain you particularly.
I'm not a rain lover.
Layla Killeran in France wanted to be accepted onto the Master of Wine for a second time. A healthy and successful harvest would be handy in order to pay for the above.
Oh, good luck, Layla.
And a bit of winter rain would definitely help. We haven't had significant rain for months and our lake is still very low. So, along similar themes, I guess, wine producers concerned over the climate, I guess it was ever thus with farmers and wine producers, but it definitely seems to have been exacerbated by climate change. We want fewer wildfires, less torrential rain, fewer brutal frosts. We're tasting the Burgundy 2021 vintage right now, aren't we? Which was devastated by frost.
Absolutely.
Particularly with the white wine producers. Some growers losing, 85, 90% of their
crop,
wasn't it?
Up to,
because the milder winters leave vines more vulnerable to spring frost. And no one wants that.
No, because the buds burst too early and then, it's disastrous. Anyway, we will come back to this. In the meantime, John Atkinson, MW, simply wanted 2022 again. I guess for the lovely summer that was perfect for English wine growers. Certainly not for England's World Cup result.
No.
Or the sad loss of Queen Elizabeth. And staying on a serious note, Bruce Evans hopes that government creates some duty reform laws which will actually work and maybe help our wineries, brewers and distillers who need it in this economic environment.
I think it's a really important point for wine lovers. Politics. Someone commented, I think, that ignoring politics was the way forward, but it's quite the opposite, sadly. These things can have a huge impact on us wine lovers. The current government proposals on duty reform, which Bruce mentions there, which will see duty rates based on alcohol content up a sliding scale. They're a total mess. We've mentioned this before in the programme. They'll be almost impossible to manage and implement. They'll be massively expensive and ultimately counterproductive anyway. They need to be ripped up and the government needs to start again. The only problem with that is the Chancellor of the Exchequer who came up with the idea was, of course,
Rishi Sunak,
who is now Prime Minister. So
it's unlikely they're going to go away quickly.
But something needs to happen because it's a mess.
It's a poser, isn't it? We also had the St Andrews Wine Company calling on the Scottish government to remove glass from their deposit return scheme, which they said will, and I quote, cripple the wine trade in Scotland. And Andrew Orr wanted Singapore to reduce wine duties for restaurants and bars to help the F&B sector recover and help better wine lists appear.
Yeah, and of course the desire for the UK to rejoin the EU was a view also expressed. And it's fair to say that Brexit has caused significant complications and carries on doing so.
Yeah.
It's very uncertain for wine importers, retailers.
And it's going to continue for the foreseeable future unless politicians on both sides can, sort out the best way forward.
Yeah. So it's impossible to have wine without politics, unfortunately. But not all politicians understand wine. So the sector is facing many headwinds around the world, isn't it? I mean, it's not just the UK, is it? You've had your alcohol bans in South Africa by the government, the 3-tier system in the US. It's badly in need of reform. Russia banning champagne, being labelled as such, Champanskoye instead. China banning Australian wine. It goes on, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And we could actually obviously mention the war in Ukraine at this point. We had some people quite rightly wishing for the war to end. But from a wine perspective, it's putting up energy costs, creating global instability, it also raising the cost of things like glass, among other raw materials. And that has a political dimension too. A.D. Halliwell said, globally, I'd like the Russian invasion to end and world leaders to put almost all their efforts into combating climate change. So I think that's nicely sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how realistic that is, but let's hope for the best. I think these are sort of times of
glass
change,
half
aren't
full.
they? Yep, and global political turmoil is not going away. I asked our 15-year-old daughter this question and she said it would be nice to have some decent world leaders for a change. You think that sort of pretty much sums it up. So I think we probably just need to get on with enjoying life and doing the best we can. I hope for better things ahead. So anyway, at this stage I think it would be good to hear some other voices, wouldn't it? So let's bring in Master Sommelier and Director of Import of Flint Wines and Cabot Restaurants, Gearoid Devaney. He's a very busy man.
He's a busy man, isn't he? Yeah. But you got him, didn't you?
I did. I caught up with him at Flint's Burgundy 2021 tasting, and I asked him what he wants to see in the year ahead.
I guess on a very selfish level for drinking, wines with great purity, maybe real sense of place, maybe some, I think, lighter alcohols. So that's kind of how my palate's probably working these days.
Yeah.
I think, as ever, from a sort of a work perspective, some help from the government and not bashing the industries, especially the hospitality side of things, in terms of allowing people to run their restaurants and successful wine and drinks programs without too much stress. Yeah, and then just I think it is exciting. I mean, we're catching up today at a tasting where having lots of winemakers in London showing their wines, which we haven't done since January 2020. So that's, I think, seeing more and more of winemakers back in town and talking about their wines, and which I think you would agree it's something that inspires us all when we hear them talking about what they do and their passion. And I think what I'm seeing more and more, and I think that's a continuing theme, and rightly so, is pretty much all the winemakers that I'm getting to know better and working with across the board. Everyone's really working in a more sort of sustainable and more eco-friendly kind of fashion. People are really paying attention to what they do in the vineyards and what they do in the cellar. I think if you went back even 15, 20 years ago, it was kind of a rarity for anyone to be maybe doing anything biodynamic or organic or whatever that might be. And I think now that's the norm. So,
yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Hard to argue with that. Purer, lighter wines. We're all over that, aren't we? We've long been champions of more moderate alcohol in our wines, largely because it means we can drink more. Yeah. But they're just more beautifully balanced, aren't they? So perhaps more cool climate viticulture, which naturally gives lower alcohols. Gearoid touches on government helping, not hindering. And then, yes, it's great to be able to travel again, to see winemakers back in town. Maybe there'll be less indiscriminate or unnecessary travel than before, hopefully, more Zoom tastings and meetings. But sometimes you just need to do things in person, and it's great being able to do that again.
It is. So, so perhaps, that might be on our wish list too. Perhaps not more travel per se, but just better, more meaningful travel, and more connections with people who've travelled themselves. So
making the most of your travel,
exactly. Which I think we're all going to appreciate that much more now, post-COVID lockdowns and travel restrictions, aren't we?
Yeah. And then he also touched lastly on the growth of organic and biodynamic viticulture that we would definitely have on our wish list for the year and the years ahead, wouldn't we? Yeah. That and things like regenerative viticulture.
That's great, isn't it?
We've long said this. Wine is a dispensable or discretionary luxury in many people's lives, and products in the future are going to increasingly need to champion their added value, whether that's environmental or sustainable credentials or whatever. People are going to ask, what is it about this product that I buy into, that I endorse beyond the wine itself or whatever the product is?
Totally. But, important to say, we'd like to see this done for the right reasons and alongside quality, not as a substitute for it, because we're also seeing things like clean or skinny wines, which we totally disagree with. It's pure marketing nonsense in our view, which is damaging for the wine category, misleading at best, So this added value category is a double-edged sword, but one that, if it's done well and for the right reasons, is definitely something we'd like to see more of.
So let's hear another view now. This one's Libby Brodie, City AM's wine columnist and founder of Bacchus and Brodie Wine Consultancy. This is what she wants to see from the year ahead.
In 2023, I think it's already on the right tracks, but I'd like to see even more diversity and inclusivity across the industry, but also with wine drinkers themselves. I think it's going the right way, but I think the more we have a breadth of wine and wine lover, the more interesting the wines are going to be that's being created, the more accepting the industry will be as a whole, and that's very exciting.
Libby, thanks so much.
The the wine world does need to be more welcoming. She's so right. Both the trade, giving opportunities to people who might never have thought wine could be a career for them, but also welcoming to those who might drink other things, frankly, and may never have thought wine could be interesting or delicious for them. We need to engage as broadly as possible.
Yeah, and as Libby says, that will ultimately make for a healthier wine trade and more interesting wine. So it's a win-win. We totally endorse this. Now, on the subject of a healthy wine trade, we did have quite a few wishes around people shopping less in supermarkets and more in independent merchants. So Phil Crozier said, I'm hoping that every high street will be home to independent wine stores, or indies as they're known, with lots of interesting wines and manned by insanely keen geeks.
I love that. Insanely keen geeks. Totally on board with that. Definitely, Phil. Now, I replied to Phil when he said that, because it was on my Twitter feed, saying, but it's hard to compete with online and consolidated players. And he replied, people work in selling wine. Algorithms can't replace that, which was very noble sentiment. Well said, Phil. I'd like to think that's true. But then David Crossley chipped in to this debate, which is the lovely thing about something like Twitter, isn't it? When actually more people can join in. So David joined in and he made a comment. Now, this comment needs prefacing because it's a serious and valid comment, but it's one that contains a hilariously unintended typo. So here we go. David wrote, the UK has many times more brilliant undies than even a decade ago, with some wonderful new openings last year.
Undies for indies. Genius. We're back to your questionable fashion sense, I think, aren't we? I mean, I'd love to see personally a study into the UK's undies and whether things have improved, particularly in terms of the openings.
It's the openings.
It's the openings.
It's the openings in the undies. Sorry. Oh dear.
I think we may have. Oh dear.
Sorry.
Trouble on board. But no,
down.
I'll carry on, shall I? You can't speak, can you? But no, I mean, it is true to say that there are new and exciting independent wine shops. Indies popping up all over, who need and deserve our support, and we should be aiming to do that as much as possible this year. It's a good wish.
It is a good wish.
Indies and
I'm just
undies.
wondering if we could open an independent wine shop next to our house called Undies Indie. No, okay, fine. Right, so maybe it's time to bring in another voice, given that mine is failing me currently. I asked our fellow Master of Wine and restaurant specialist Peter McCombie what he wanted to see more of from wine in the year ahead.
Freshness. It's interesting, we are now at a Burgundy taste in 2021, and the thing that strikes me, having got a third of the way around the room, is how delicious and fresh these wines are. And in a way, I guess it's quite classic, and I hate the word classic because it's a bit of a cop-out, but it is. There's just this deliciousness about Chardonnay in particular from this vintage in Burgundy that's lovely. Having said that, sort of expanding beyond that, I would say if you look at maybe the new world, I think there's also a trend towards freshness, which I would like to see happening. So, for example, in New Zealand, where I originally come from, Pinot Noir now, they know they can get fruit, and now they're actually going for a bit more vitality and a bit more freshness, and not stamping down or foot on the pedal and trying to get the most out of the grapes. So, again, and I've just was in last year I was in Argentina, and again Malbec. You think of Malbec as a big, ripe, juicy, bam, 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 and actually there's some really lovely Malbecs being made with no oak sometimes. And so for me, I think that's what I want to see more of. People just looking at drinkability, and for me, freshness is at the heart of drinkability. I think there's some really interesting emerging areas. I think there are places, not necessarily new, but maybe new old. And I do some work in Macedonia, for example. So I have an iron in the fire here. But I think Macedonia has the potential to make really delicious wines. And they've got a grape called Vranac, which means black stallion. And it makes delicious, chunky Mediterranean wines, but they have freshness.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you very much, Peter.
Excellent.
We'd definitely second freshness and drinkability. There's been, I can't think of how to put this quite, but there's been way too much one-upmanship in wines, hasn't there? They were getting so ridiculously powerful and dense and extracted and oaky and alcoholic. And I think we are seeing the pendulum shift back now towards wines that are refreshing, drinkable, balanced, food-friendly, and just fun to drink. Absolutely, we want to see this trend continue in the year ahead. Less is more.
It sounds weird, doesn't it? It's a paradox. Drinkability should be important to wine. It's a drink, But we somehow managed to get away from that.
Well,
weird.
yeah.
Anyway, drinkability, freshness, totally on board with that. And the idea of newer or new old regions, as Peter said, and great varieties emerging. That's a common thread that cropped up elsewhere in our debate. So David Crossley, he again of the Undies, touted Bouget and wines from Switzerland, Japan, Czech Republic, Greece and Alsace. Eric Burgess wanted more people to discover the hidden gem of Montilla Moriles. And the Great Wine Company wanted this to be Riesling's year in the UK finally.
Why have we heard that before? But here's hoping the Davids can challenge the wine Goliaths a bit more this year. I mean, it is happening, particularly with some sommeliers. Increasingly, they're pushing this kind of off-piste wine, which seems really trendy to do, and that's another wish, that good sommeliers keep up their great work and we all listen to them and back them and make sure we all go out and enjoy restaurants and bars when we can.
Absolutely. So talking of which, I caught up with two such winos on a street in London. It's not as dodgy as it sounds.
It sounds very
they're
dodgy.
Bona fide, much more so than me, probably.
Back street in London.
Yeah, so Ricardo and Ioannis from the Claret Wine Bar in Marylebone, which is connected to Chateau Margaux in Bordeaux. Now, we've already heard briefly from Ioannis, but this is what they both had to say.
Hi, my name is Ricardo. I live here in London and I'm the general manager of Claret. It's a wine bar in Marylebone. For me, this year I hope that a lot of wines from the New World, but mainly all the small and autochthon variety from France, Spain and Italy, majority, they come out a little bit more. I'm very, very passionate of those wine that are unknown, because it express a lot more the terroir and it's nice to try a little bit something different. So I hope that I can see that London is moving towards that, so I'm very happy.
So trying something new, but can you give me an example?
Well, I can talk a lot about Italy. I'm Italian, so like Piedi Rosso or Picchio or Samaglianico as well. A lot of people are familiar with Taurasi, but there is also the Vulture is very, very quite known. Catarratto is another variety from Sicily that is coming out. From Spain, I'm a big fan of Monastrell. I really enjoy it. And the New World, especially Tannat from Uruguay. I'm a big passion of Torrontes from Argentina as well. I like it quite a lot. But my favorite is German Riesling, is my why to go.
Hi there, my name is Ioannis Psilakis. I'm working for Claret as well. So for 2023, I would like to discover some new grape varieties or some English wines. I have already tried a sparking from Gooseborn, English sparking. Beautiful, yeah. First time when I saw this wine, it was like, okay, sparking wine from England. Must be horrible. I was saying to myself, So I tried it, and the wine was amazing. It was quite very close to champagne especially from Côte Blanc. It was very, very pure style. Looking for new, actually from very unusual grape varieties. I am from Greece. We are going well. We are growing every year. We're getting better. We are not France, of course. We are not Italy. But okay, still, we are still nice.
In terms of England, we're making some lovely still wines as well, some lovely still Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. What do you reckon? Do you think you can sneak one of those onto the list?
I haven't tried something, but yeah, why not? Why not? If Mr. Ricardo is up for it, yeah, we will.
Thank you very much indeed, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love that. So will we see English Pinot on the list at a Bordeaux-owned wine bar in central London?
Well, if Mr. Ricardo's up for it,
I think we may just have to go and follow up on that purely for research purposes, of course.
Work.
But no, I think English wine fits into the list of exciting up and coming wine categories, and we'd certainly love to see more people enjoying more of these wines this year. Not just the amazing fizz, but also the great still UK wines,
which you've just written a piece about in Decanter, haven't you?
I may have, indeed.
We'll put a link up to that in the show notes.
Bit of a plug there.
A little bit of a plug. But I did also just read that sales of English wine are going very well, aren't they? At the moment?
They are.
As we've said before, lots of Dumont mongers have been predicting a glut or oversupply of English and Welsh wine as production has surged, but we do seem all to be buying it, and that's fantastic news. So apparently Christmas sales of English fizz, English sparkling wine, were up 19% at Majestic last year, and this after overall sales of all UK wine grew 69% between 2019 and 2021. So sales are surging, and that's great to see. More people can enjoy it.
I mean, but beyond people just discovering and drinking UK wines, perhaps this year we could hope that more people get out there and visit the estates. There are some great days out to be had by heading into English wine country, whether that's Kent, Cornwall, Essex, even urban wineries in London.
Yeah, all over. I think that's a really good wish, actually, Tab. Yeah, that's all. And maybe actually we can extend that to a more global ambition. Let's all get out wherever we are in the world, visit a vineyard or two, wherever's closest to you. Not always easy for some people, but some of us actually live very close or surprisingly close, and it's a really enjoyable thing to do. I know we do it for our job. But it's always a pleasure, isn't it? Meeting the people behind the wine, seeing where things are grown, supporting their businesses, and having fun while you're at it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we wrap things up, any final things we might add to our wish list for the year ahead? What do you think?
Compulsory podcast listening for everyone, particularly Wine Blast.
Wine
at least
Blast,
3 hours
Wine
a
Blast,
day.
not Jumper Blast.
Well, no, hang on, wine jumpers all round. That's got to come in. No. I think one thing I'd throw in for my personal wine drinking wish list is finding more brilliant Chardonnay and Pinot Noir outside Burgundy, because the prices of Burgundy have just gone into the stratosphere, haven't they?
They are a bit crazy.
That's going to be on my hit list, on my wish list for this year. So I'll definitely be looking out for that. Bigger picture, I'd love to see the wine world making real collaborative progress on action against climate change and pollution, and promoting biodiversity around the world. What about you? Before I start advocating for,
I'm going to say I'm a bit shallower than that. I just want some delicious sparkling wine to fill my life and bring joy and fun But keeping an open mind really. And then I think just some of the other things that we've already mentioned: drinking those special bottles rather than keeping them, supporting your local winemakers, and yes, I mean bigger picture. Don't we all want an end to the war in Ukraine? Better leadership around the world. Including governments taking a proper responsible approach to wine and engaged approach to wine. I mean, there's so much, isn't there? Yeah. Anyway, we can pick up on these and more in our follow-on episode coming very shortly, How to Be a Better Wine Lover. So make sure to tune into that by way of squaring this particular circle.
Achieving closure, perhaps. Anyway, but no, we'd love to hear your views on what would be at the top of your wish list for 2023. Maybe this episode has sparked some thoughts or reactions, so get in touch. But also, more importantly, we'd love to hear from you how you think you or we all could be better wine lovers. You can email us, send us a message on social media, or leave us a voice message on SpeakPipe, and we'll put links to all those things in the show notes.
Our thanks to Libby Brodie, Peter McCombie, Gearoid Devaney, and both Ricardo and Ioannis from Claret. Thanks also to you for joining us. Until next time, cheers.